All right, dude. So sorry, ready to roll.
Oh, no problem, man. I know you guys got plenty going on. Trust me.
No, man, it's a writer's room, and we were out late carousing last night because it was a premiere party for Ted Lasso, and we had to finish something today that I said I'd be done with by noon. It took me till 5 minutes ago, dude. I'm so sorry.
Oh, no worries. I actually, funny enough, I ended up at that Ted Lasso premiere party last night. I was looking around and I didn't see you anywhere in there.
Were you really there, dude? Because I met Sarah Spain there for like 30 seconds. So I'm surprised you weren't circling around her somewhere, man.
Sarah was my ticket in there, actually. I must have missed her at that point. She texted me at 8:30 last night and said, hey, hypothetically, if I had an extra ticket to this premiere party, could you be in Brentwood by 9:35? And as she put it, she's like, you're the only single childless person I know in this area of Los Angeles who could have done it. So big win for me lifestyle-wise.
Very funny, dude.
Yeah, no.
I'm sorry. If I had known you were there, I would have found you. I'm sorry, man. I was literally hiding. It was definitely a weird, surreal night.
I was always curious, is that part of the process that you like or not? Those sort of moments.
Dude, have we started? If we started, I'll be much more less cursy.
Yeah, we've started, but you can curse on this podcast.
Cool. Yeah. It used to be my thing. I love it when it's small and you're celebrating with the cast and crew. These things for me are often not in a negative way because I like everybody, but work-like of thanking executives and talking to different people that let us make the show and all that stuff, man.
Yeah. Once I saw Tim Cook in the building, I was like, oh, it's this kind of party.
Yeah, man. Then I had to do a moment with Tim Cook. I'm still in an Emmy speech the first year. I called him T-Dog, and it kind of became a joke because I don't really know him. So I still have to have he's a nice man, but I have to have an awkward conversation with him anytime he shows up because I'm not good at that stuff, man.
I mean, listen, you calling him T-Dog, I feel like on the scale of awkward encounters is a lot less humbling as you walked onto this Zoom and realized that you have seen me wearing man spanks on the internet. That's a very interesting way to meet somebody. Yeah,
man, it's an honest connection for us. It makes you immediately vulnerable and humanizes you. I try to seem accessible the same way, dude. I wear hoodies and stuff,
Well, I realized coming onto this that I essentially did I always called it the Ryan Russillo where I left ESPN to move to Los Angeles, but I realized you're a Connecticut guy, so I did the Bill Lawrence going Connecticut to Los Angeles trying to make it work.
I like that more because I know Russillo a bit. He played in my basketball game once or twice out here, believe it or not, and he's a good dude, man. I like all my connections to the people that used to be at ESPN because I don't have many connections to people that are still there.
Yeah, no, there's an interesting breakout from all that. And ironically, a lot of people decided after living in central Connecticut, they'd rather live in Southern California, which isn't shocking.
Well, look, I mean, I wouldn't say that those are opposite ends of the scale, but they're close. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We're in Connecticut, man.
I grew up in Avon and then went to high school in West Hartford.
Yeah, okay. I should have known that. I knew that. Yeah, I grew up in the mean streets of Ridgefield, Connecticut.
There you go. Say it's
I got out though, man. It was a success story. I pulled myself up by my Fairfield County bootstraps. Got out of it.
A true miracle that you're here with us today. Here, we're appreciative you found your way out here. I'm also I'm glad you survived playing basketball with Russillo. Are you as intense on the court as Ryan is? Because I know he takes that very seriously.
He's a hard charger, man. The one reason I love getting the opportunity to talk to athletes and stuff like yourself is that there's even though I'm not one I badly wish to be, and the perspective of how you have to change who you are. I don't think he's changed who he is as an athlete yet. I was I'm a tall guy and I'm a very adequate slasher, and I don't venture in there anymore, man. It's where you get hurt. I pay for that shit for days now.
Yeah, there's nothing less exciting than having to explain your adult injury to people that you work with.
Yeah, dude. The saddest I had a milestone. My son is about 6'5". He played ball in high school and had to stop there. And my two milestones were he finally beat me in one-on-one. And I actually had to talk to a sports therapist about it because we said first 1 to 10 games, either he has to make my lunch, for every weekend for a couple of weeks, or I had to buy him a jersey he wanted. And he went up. He's much better than me. He can dunk. He's a better shooter, better athlete. And he went up 8 games to 2 and then started talking shit. And so I just decided to, A, I'm going to psychologically defeat him. And B, Whatever. I'm going to play him tight on his jump shot. Whenever he drives, I'm just going to tackle him into the fucking bushes and not worry about it.
Yep.
And it got a really gross kind of pressure because I made it nine. I got it to 9 games to 8 him, and my wife had to say like, "What are you doing? You know, why does this matter to you?" And I literally talked to a therapist buddy. I'm doing a show about therapy now, who said you can't let him win, but you also can't do this crap you're doing. You have to play straight up, be kind. You can't foul him intentionally. And he just rocked me to win. And so that was like a huge. And then part 2 of it, I went on Dan and Stugatz's show, and I played ball because I was working out in Miami, and they speak so highly of you. You should know that. Tony played in his game, and the next day on the show, they asked him if I was good. He's like, he's got a great old man game. I'm like, dude, you just killed me. You killed me.
Between that and them, I saw them, they were reading like the critiques from Time Magazine about shrinking on there. That, you want to talk about psychological warfare, those guys, that was below the belt as far as I'm concerned.
Well, you know, I don't think that there's, all right, I often say when I talk about this stuff that people mistake Hollywood and sports for being massively different than any other business. And in lots of ways they aren't. You know what I mean? In lots of ways, you know, you have your shelf life, you're either hot or you're not, you have a free agent year, it's the same type. The one thing that is kind of overlap that doesn't exist elsewhere are you signed on for a job that people are going to crap on you, you know, even if you're trying your best, you know, if it does not come up at the level they want it to. And I've been thinking about this all day. It's fascinating. Seth Rogen gave a super interesting interview yesterday that could have been given by a former athlete instead of an actor. And he said, I don't know what's changed in our culture, but I think if the critics, or in your case, when we're talking about sports, you know, some of the sports reporters out there knew how much the crap they said really personally, the tone of it now personally hurts you. He's like, I think they'd stop, you know, or at least, and he wasn't saying they'd stop saying like, oh, this player sucked, or this player's no good, or this show stinks, or but the tone of which some of these things are written now are so personal and damaging. I feel like I'm Teflon. And the one I was laughing about that you just mentioned, I mean, it took me to my knee, man. I felt like I had been pushed off of a bunk bed, you know, and you're like,
oh yeah, I will never forget, and hopefully I always try and go back to this as I go along, because you're right. I think for a lot of people, the further away they get from the process, the harder it is for them to remember there are human beings in the middle of it. And I have this distinct memory of like 4 years ago, as I'm just getting going and trying to keep that top of mind. My dad's advice was always, hey, you're criticizing the action and not the actor. Like, you can't make it personal. And that was when Eddie Lacy was still with the Packers, and he was, you know, a heavier running back. And a lot of people would comment on that. And Eddie came out and said that affected him. Like, he had to talk to somebody about that because he battled to keep his weight down. And I remember sitting there going, my God, if he hadn't said anything, we'd have probably all just kept going on making jokes about this like it didn't. And finally, you have some people speaking up, which I think is hopefully going to help that. But I don't even know if that's possible at this point.
I don't know, man. You know, it's really fascinating. People don't even realize it about criticism in entertainment. When I was a kid, and I'm old, you know, there were critics like a woman named Pauline Kael is a famous film critic or a theater critic in Frankfurt. The people would get excited to read their reviews, negative or positive, because they were never personally mean. They were well written, like short stories and insightful. And even if you read that stuff about your own crap, you would be like, oh, that's a good point. Or that's it. And it never felt like someone was just hammering you. And now man, I'm literally half the time, if someone doesn't like things, like, well, you know what you're going to get with the Bill Lawrence show, this piece of crap. And I'm like, whoa, what happened? I'm a pretty decent guy.
I can say, what did I ever do to all of you guys? Good Lord.
I know, man. Look, the one thing that we have that actors, athletes, even hosts like yourself don't have is we have a step removed, because at least I get to live in the world of like, oh, you're judging this stuff I wrote on a pad and not me personally. Once you enter into the world of, you know, feeling like you're personally attacked, man, it's rough out there.
I think, and because I heard you talking on the South Beach sessions with Dan about your start being in stand-up comedy when you first came out here, does that influence how you write, knowing that, like, hey, part of what I'm doing in here is going to end up being in a performance with someone that's going to be on them. Like, to your point, that actor's face and name are front and center on all of that. Did that experience being on the stage, being in front of people like that, kind of influence the way that you wrote for others for that reason?
Yeah, in two different ways. Look, one is I think I started in something called multi-camera sitcoms where I'm so old, man, that, my first show I created was called Spin City, but I wrote on Friends, Boy Meets World, and there'd be a live audience. And there is nothing, if you have the experience of a stand-up, of just going out and eating it, of having a night or some material that people just do not respond to in any way, shape, or form, you have an extra layer of protection for actors and actresses you like, because for them to die up on stage with something they didn't even write. I still remember, by the way, is I insist Mike Fox is the nicest guy in the planet. The coolest thing of, an icon for me was suddenly saying stuff I wrote. And I remember the first year I convinced him to try a joke that he didn't like. I'm like, oh, I'll just try it. It'll be funny, man. And, in front of a packed audience, he did it. It was silence. And he broke in the middle of the scene. He just goes, "I'm going to murder you, Bill." And then the audience all laughed. I'm literally like, "I'm so sorry. I'm sorry, man." So that aspect of it, of not wanting to subject people to that, I think it drives you, makes you work harder. I think the other thing it teaches you stand up is to look. There's two schools of writing, especially comedy writing. There's a lot of, no judgment, there's a lot of men and women that are they're married to their words. And it might sound jerkish, like when I go, "Oh, you're not allowed to riff or to change a line from and to also," or whatever. And before you go, "Well, that's not fair," it's no different than like if you or I got hired to do Romeo and Juliet, which would be horrible casting. But if we got hired to do Shakespeare and we showed up on Broadway and I was like, "Hey, I'm probably going to riff a couple of these lines," they'd be like, "What? We don't change it. That's not how it works." So I get it. But for me, what stand-up taught me was there are different things that comics and comedians can say that only work because they're coming out of their voice, And try it sometime. I told some young comedy writers I was teaching at a college to say, one of your favorite stand-ups sometime, go online and try to find a written out, version of one of their bits, unless it's a hard setup, punchline, whatever, just to read it. Sometimes it's not funny. Sometimes the shit Chappelle, until it comes out of Chappelle's mouth or Bill Burr's mouth, or Sarah Silverman's mouth, sometimes it, on the page, you're like, "Oh, that's kind of," and then when they say it, you're like, boom. So with TV writing, I really embraced I say with actors and actresses, when I do a pilot, the characters belong 50% to the performers and 50% to the writers. But then they get to start taking more and more ownership every week, till on my shows that work the best, the cast by the end of the first season can say stuff like, "I wouldn't say that," or "Is it okay if I say this differently?" Or "The best thing is I'm going to do a different joke here," and they do it all on their own. And then someone comes up to me and goes, "Hey, I love that joke." I just go, "Thank you." I don't care.
It's honestly, the parallels with that are actually incredible, kind of with soccer at the forefront of Ted Lasso, because really you think about that for the manager, that's what, you can put so much into them, and then these people have to take ownership. For you, then, with that as that style of giving some of this autonomy to the actors, do you watch some characters like change markedly from what you had in mind when you're cooking this up? Like when you look at Ted Lasso now, where we're at in season 3, is there a character who you never would have predicted evolved the way they did over the course of the show because an actor took some risks or took liberties with that?
Yeah, look, I can tell you right on the bat, that's a completely different situation, only because I called it the answer key. Jason Sudeikis, such a strong, and still is. I mean, he's running the show the third year. I'm able to do other shows because that guy's just not an actor and writer. He's a showrunner. And so for me, third season, I go, "Hey, I'm going to go do Shrinking in this thing called Bad Monkey in Miami." And he ran the show himself. The reason we call him the answer key, this is what's so weird, is to be in a writer's room with somebody that is pitching and developing stuff for their character. And before you put it on film, you can find out if it works because he'll just say it right next to you,
Damn.
Which is freaky. The most interesting character change for me, I was blown away by, is the dude that plays Roy, Brett Goldstein, is he's a comedy writer and a comedian first. And you rarely see this. He's the exact antithesis of his character in real life. He's so sweet and so sensitive and kind, and he doesn't talk like this and he doesn't growl, And so to see him, instead of just kind of like a lot of times some of the actors and actresses in comedy, especially that we love the most, are playing versions of themselves. You know what I mean? And that's what we respond to. You want to believe that Tom Hanks is really like that. My other show, Harrison Ford, is really like that. It's fascinating when somebody takes something that from the second they get the part, you're like, oh, it's going to be a much more kind of open, emotional, sensitive guy. And he just to say, Brett's taken it so far, you'll be hard pressed to find a picture of him in the media smiling. He decided back then, he's like, man, if I'm going for it, I'm going for it. Even his photos, it's this, just absolute asshole face. You know what I mean? I don't think anybody expected him to fly that way. It was really cool. He crushed it.
I think with him especially, he kind of is a big part of what I think you do really well. And hearing your talk about sports and your background in sports and how much you love that, it makes a lot more sense, because the one thing, as I've, talked about the show and talked with people about the show, part of me always goes back to the former athlete stuff. And I feel like you guys hit so many of these smaller notes about locker room dynamics and about players transitioning away from the game and the difficulties with identity crisis, in addition to the obvious, overt conversations about the mental health around athletes. And I feel like Brett's character in Roy, especially the beginning of season 2, you really see so many of the parts of every former athlete, or I'd say the vast majorities, transition from the game into whatever their next role is. Like, did that just come from you and your experience? Were there other people that you talked about with that? How did that go?
Well, look, this show in particular, I think one of the cool things about it was Jason and I initially connected. He's a hell of a basketball player. He's a sports nut. One of our first bonding things the first year was he came out to my basketball game and immediately, that's how you judge somebody. He immediately equipped himself very well. He's Midwestern boy with a Midwestern jump shot, and so on that show, the most interesting thing about it, as far as being knowledgeable about the sports, it was going to be a sports show, so we had to kind of be obsessive about it. Brendan Hunt, who plays Coach Beard, is truly an encyclopedia of this stuff, and we're all fans. But the bigger issue was not knowing the Premier League the same way, and really discovering that it's the closest thing to regional college football, here, in the way that they have psychotic localized fan bases, and that kind of, a small city passion that also transcends nationally. We had to staff that show with Brett Goldstein, whose parents are all Tottenham Hotspurs, and Phoebe Walsh, whose family are all people that grew up with the passion of Premier League. So we understood it and could equate it to all our athlete friends. But what's so more interesting is your question's so good, because it's the perspective. I think, to me, it's easy to do sports when you're doing sports. But I think if you grow up in that world, guy or girl, Jason and I connected, and a lot of my shows end up being about mentorship and coaching. You know what I mean? And Dr. Cox on Scrubs was without a doubt half my English teacher and half my basketball coach. You know what I mean? And and even on Ted Lasso, Jason made all the writers, when they showed up for interviews, you had to tell a story of an influential mentor in your life, of someone who either made you believe you could get over a hump, or someone that made you believe, because having anybody make you believe you can do it in sports, or grow up in Connecticut and suddenly be writing comedy, even though I didn't know anybody west of the Mississippi, you need somebody that gives you that I believe in you, stuff, whether you register that it's happening or not, and it's amazing that everybody has those stories regardless of walks of life. And look, eventually I'm going to do one too many podcasts and people are going to realize I write the same thing every time, but I'm so into that world, of the people that got us here along the way. It's one of the reasons not to take you to it, but over the years, I've loved your relationship with your pop. It's inspiring on the same level, and it's the stuff I like writing about.
No, I think those are the things that everyone can relate to. Like I always, go back to that. That was the number one thing I got notes about when we were doing the show together was people that say, oh, I work with my mom every day or I work with my old man, and they see themselves in that part of it. I will say to that end too, you shouldn't feel too bad about how that basketball game went with your son, because my dad was a high school and college wrestler, had the same thing. He always threw on the offer is whenever you think you're ready, we'll go out and we'll go after this. It ended up being Easter Sunday on my grandmother's front lawn in the neighborhood my dad grew up in. We were out full-blown, like, college wrestling style, getting down on the mat in the front yard in our Easter Sunday clothes, absolutely embarrassing our entire family in the neighborhood.
Outstanding.
Cooked his ass. I absolutely cooked his ass, but so.
It's outstanding. I will tell you, I was thinking about this the other day. My dad's struggling right now. He's an older guy, and that's a bummer. But I was thinking about him the other day, and I went back into some photo albums, and not to get into tennis too much, but my dad was a good tennis player, and I should have beaten him much younger. And I finally, at 16, just got over it and just kicked it. When you flip the switch, I just kicked his ass.
Mm-hmm.
I just absolute beat down. And that's why I love my mom. My mom was like, let me get a picture of this. And my dad turned to the camera and gave double barrels, and I have that in my photo album because she sent it out as our Christmas card. It said, Merry Christmas from the Lawrences. It said inside, it's like, this is the first time Bill beat his dad in tennis. And by the way, there was no joke aspect of it. He was covered in sweat and just furious. It made me so happy.
Oh yeah. It's better when it's earned like that. Yeah, and like you said, you had that conversation. It can't be a gimme. You can't just give it up. This has got to be earned, not given. So
can't cheat, but you can't give it up.
That's
why. The problem is though, once that dam breaks, dude. Once that dam breaks, you're done. And now I've literally, in my own basketball game, when my son's in town from college, if I'm guarding him, he'll literally, it's like the shit I used to do. It'd be like, mouse in the house. I'm like, dude, don't do that. I'm like, don't do that, man. It's uncool. Uncool. I'm 6'3". I'm not tiny. He's a beanpole, man.
Man, it's tough whenever we get a little, you can't give us an inch. That's the one thing I know as a son now of 33 years, you can't give us an inch because we will absolutely take a mile. Oh, it's
absolutely bleak, man. So upsetting.
No, it definitely is. That seminal moment there for the personal life here for you now. Like, do you get nervous when you've got something like this coming up anymore? Like for you guys, season 2 was, in some ways it felt like a risk. It took a very serious turn on a show that had been sold to so many people as this big hopeful thing. You've got season 3 coming out right now. You're in the middle of season 1 of Shrinking. Do you still get, like, for lack of a better term, pregame jitters with a lot of these?
Yeah, man. Hollywood's really weird because it's like people have been nice to me, like, oh, you got a lot of good shows. I'm really lucky that all my absolute stinkers were so bad they never got on TV. A couple did and were awful, and I hide from them and keep my head buried. I think the thing that we all fear the most is expectations. Do you know what I mean? Out here. And that's, from my point of view, there's two things. One is expectations, what I'll get back to. The first one is the most fun version of this gig are casting people and working with people that you want to hang around with anyways. Because, again, to equate it to team sports, it's like being at Thanksgiving with your family, but for fucking 6 or 7 months instead of a weekend, right? And there's always all the people you love and love hanging out with, but there's always the crazy drunk uncle, and the cousin you just want to beat down and all that stuff. So you generally work with people you want to spend time with, hopefully anyways, or forge those relationships. And from my position, there's a feeling of not wanting to let them down. Easy example, man, of Harrison Ford is an awesome dude, icon for me. He's 80 years old. If I worked hard to get that dude to do this and it came out and everybody was like, he sucks and it's awful, I would be like, oh man, what did I do to Indiana Jones? It would crush me to, like, same thing with Mikey back in the day. You go on the one hand, man, it's so fun. I'm like, oh, Family Ties, Back to the Future, Mike Fox. If I had written his return to TV show and everybody's like, dude, this sucks, the aspect of letting someone down that's a teammate you care about is there. And then the other thing is I find it so much easier to be – the first year of Ted Lasso was just fun because Jason, Joe Kelly, Brennan Hunt, me, the 4 creators, the staff, we didn't know if the show would work. We just knew it was cool at that time in the world to be working on something optimistic and hopeful, and that we all dug on doing that every day. And then it worked, and that was like the icing on the cake. It was really cool. What comes with the second year then is expectations, when it's like, whoa, this is, by the way, and I was always blown away, because I hadn't been through it that much, by how quickly in sports it goes from, even for the winners, man, well, you just won the NBA championship. You guys think you can repeat? I'm like, as 10 minutes ago. I feel like, it's insane. And so on a couple of these shows, a real feeling of it better be as good as last year. It better live up to these heightened expectations. That kind of underdog status is the stuff that's more fun. And yeah, I feel the pressure of that in a way that it's so self-defeating, because doing anything for results never works out. You know what I mean? To be doing it because you dig it and you're trying to do the best version of it you can, and the results land where they land. It's just hard. Man, it's just hard.
Yeah.
It's the same people that say winning it isn't everything. It's it logically, but emotionally it tears you up.
Oh, there's no doubt, especially when that's the process that you're so buried in day to day. You said you don't try and tune out a lot of the criticism, a lot of the praise. Is there like a person in your life that you look to, or like a mentor, someone where it's, hey, if I'm getting it right, this person is telling me so?
Yeah, man. I used to want to call my production company Noble Failure Productions, because I always felt like if you can show something to your friends and family without feeling like an idiot, you got to call it a win.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And that's not always the case, because when you're young, there's so many things that can go wrong, man. It's like it's fun with you to keep equating things to sports. But I always say, like, unless a team's doing, I'm a Sixers fan, unless they're doing the Sixers, process of tanking, every one of these teams they're put together, when they're put together, there's people in rooms, somewhere in America going, this could work. We're going to win.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Yeah. All shows start out like that. You can make a mistake with writing and casting and the director and whatever. Or when you're a young guy, you can go in and pitch a show to a network, and you're like, I'm going to do a cool show about a young newlywed couple in their 20s, and it's going to be authentic and cool, and what it was like to be partying and married at the same time. And then when you go in there, they'll go, we'll make it, but they need to have like a 10-year-old that talks like a 30-year-old who's super smart, and a wiseacre, and they need to have superpowers, and then we'll make it. Your head goes, I can make that work. And then like a week later, you're going, oh no, this is horrible.
This has gone so badly.
And none of them are going to raise their hand when they go, whose idea was this? They're going to go, oh, his name is on the credits. You're fine. So I think, the goal of making a noble failure for my buddies and my family is almost 90% of the battle nowadays.
Makes sense. And it's the right audience, because they know you well enough to not do it. It's kind of like what you described before. All of that, if there's any criticism, is going to come from a place of love. If there's any feedback, it's going to come from a place you trust.
Also, it doesn't sting as much when people dig on you and care about you. As opposed to the random. Someday I'll have the confidence to go through all my just biggest shit bombs and how much they stung, man. Just awful. I made the TV version of Rush Hour. You didn't even know that existed. It was a huge swing and miss.
Oh man, you've done a good job of covering your tracks on that, because you're right. I had no idea.
That was a debacle, man. It was rough. That one was on TV. Unfortunately, that was one of the ones when they're like, hey, "We're going to put it on TV," and you're like, "Oh no."
and you know pretty early in that one, it's like, oh, this has gone very wrong.
Yeah, I think that was on for like an hour and a half. I think it was on for like 5 weeks.
Yeah, listen, my uncle was on Saved by the Bell the college years, so I know what it's like to watch someone realize in real time this might not be going well. You've had a lot of successes, obviously, too. Like, I grew up watching a lot of Scrubs. Obviously, everyone's loved Ted Lasso. Shrinking is off to an awesome start also. For Scrubs and for Ted, since we're in season 3 now, how do you think about ending something like this, especially when it's something people have built up so much love for?
Well, things have changed, man. And I'll tell you, the weirdest thing is that the network TV business, and you might be a little too young for it. You probably remember it when you were a kid, was you do these shows for 8, 9, 10 years, if it's a huge success because it would syndicate, and you're doing 24 episodes. We made, I think, like 200 episodes of Scrubs. I made 105 episodes of Spin City in like 4 years, and it lasted like 6 or 7 years. And the characters don't change much, and you figure out how to end it in a way of everybody. It's Sam Malone turning the lights off in the bar before he leaves. And it doesn't really happen in those versions. It never really happens until you're told that it's over. You know what I mean?
Mm.
I mean, Scrubs was different because we always knew how it would kind of end, but even that, it was on 8 years. I can't believe I spent that much of my life doing one thing. The way that streaming has changed is when Jason and I and Brennan and Joe came up with, went out and pitched it. We were pitching a beginning, middle, and end of a story, and that's why what's so interesting is it's become, the story we're telling is over, and I understand, and it's all up to Jason, but I understand when Jason's saying, no, this story is ending. And people trying to read into that. Does that mean it's an end? Does that mean it's never going to be more Ted Lasso? Does that mean there's not going to be a spinoff? And I think he's being cagey in a good way of just saying, no, we pitched a story of a beginning, a middle, an end. You can see it coming. Sports movies. It's gonna. You know what I mean? I think there'll be lots of surprises. I think people are going to dig on it. So that's the only difference nowadays is shrinking. When I went out and told them what the show was, they said, the first year is about grief, the second year is about forgiveness, and the third year is about moving forward. And actually told them, going like, hey, I don't know what every episode is, but here are the characters, and here's the beginning, middle, and end, and hopefully you dig it. And it's a new type of storytelling that I think that's why it gets weird sometimes for us as fans when shows go on a little longer than you expected, and they're vamping or treading water. Because now people like their characters to change and move forward. Back then, I mean, if Sam Malone quit his job and started a new career and then got married the second, you'd be like, what's going on? Why did Norm become a bad guy? Like Nate and Ted Lasso. It's all very weird. So I'm a dinosaur, man. It's been really cool to ride the wave of these changes and get to keep hitching my wagon to young, talented people. So I get to keep doing it.
Do you like that version of storytelling better this way?
Yeah, I think there's merit to all of them. I think what's really weird is I still think multi-camera sitcoms are a crack up, and I can watch old episodes of Cheers tonight and be happy.
Yeah.
For me, what's really fun about it is it's something new, and I got my 10,000 hours, man. It's to still be coming into work and psyched about it because I'm doing something different. It's an absolute blast. The only difference now is, in sitcoms, you'd work till like 2 a.m. and behave badly and go out drinking afterwards when you're a kid. And now all these writers, if it ever hits like 8 or 9, I get so grumpy. They like lead me to my car like I'm like, hey, why don't you just go home and we'll tell you everything else we did in the morning. It's going to be great,
Oh God. So wait, you were writing for Harrison Ford from your own perspective of him inside that group getting rides to work.
Dude, I am 54 years young, man. I got my first sitcom gig when I was 22, so that's a lot more years. I'm Bangsy, so people don't know how old I am.
It's smart. I wish I had that same option here going forward, but God gives his toughest battles to me, apparently.
There you go.
You mentioned the 10,000 hours. What do you feel like at this point? Like going through this process, I'm sure you learn a lot all the time, but what do you feel like and you can give to other people now?
Well, yeah, look, I know the business aspect of it, and that's boring, but I think it matters that you know how to play the game a little bit. But I really love teaching about, kind of writing and story itself. I teach at schools. There's a cool thing out here called the Showrunners Training Program that I've taught at since its inception. And it's because TV is, again, equating it to sports. It's really weird. You can get a little training and be a backup quarterback for 4 or 5 years, and then Jordan Love it, and maybe get your chance to start this year. We'll see. Do you know what I mean? Or you can be, because of something you came up with, or because of an actor or an actress, be a top 5 draft pick, where people are literally going, you got to run a TV show this year, having never done it before. And just so you know, even if eventually you'd be good at this, if you fail this year, it's going to set you back. Like all these videos, it's going to set you back 5 years, 10 years before you get another chance again. Do you know what I mean? So that part of it is very similar. And so I try, when I teach, to tell the people little things to look for of, like comedy writers, any young people at home that are funny and write jokes. I could tell you right away that jokes are easy and story is hard. And a trick that I tell all of them, if you've written something that you can take a joke from any one character and have a different character say it, and it doesn't bother you, then you've made a grave mistake, because all you do is have a bunch of talking heads. You know what I mean? And that's why when you look at a show like Cheers, Cliff Clavin's jokes couldn't come out of Sam's mouth. Woody's jokes couldn't come out of Rebecca's mouth. It just is character first, and then look, the hardest thing, the longer you get to do it, we always keep a young person. Every one of my shows always has a couple staff writers that are just starting out, because it's so important to have somebody that still comes to work and is like, wow, a TV show. Because, man, if you are cynical and jaded and you forget that you're getting paid money to goof around, hang with people you'd hang with anyways and write jokes, and you get cynical, people can sense that shit, and they do not respond, man. So, because that's when you get into mail-in central.
Yeah, it's true. People, I think now we talked about some of the differences with audiences, and I think this has always been true to an extent, but you see now with younger people too, they could sniff out inauthenticity
without
very
doubt.
easily.
Not only in scripted programming and human beings when they talk, it's just people have a nose for it. And look, it's so interesting now that there's if my dad has 9 billion different streaming platforms he watches, and we're in trouble, right? And it used to be in the network days, there would always be, they called them hammock shows. So if there's a huge show on 8 and a huge show at 9, you could put in kind of a mailed in shit sandwich at 8:30 and people would still watch it, You weren't even sure what you watched. You're like, yeah, no, I guess I'll go get some food during this one. I'll catch a couple of jokes. And you can't do that anymore. You got to grab, at the very least, a passionate, core audience. You're doing it here, man. Nobody can be everything to everybody. But if you get a passionate fan base that's like, I'm down with this, you got to feed them. You got to be real and authentic. You know what I mean? And you got to meet the responsibility, of what got them into it in the first place. Or you're doomed. You've seen it a bunch, man.
Oh, it's unbelievable. It's the absolute truth. And I feel like for you, a lot of the people that you've worked with now, I mean, going back to between Zach Braff, obviously Jason Sudeikis, Jason Segel, like all of these guys kind of exude that energy, where I was talking about shrinking with someone today, and they're like, with Jason Segel, I always believe it. Like whatever he's doing and however it comes out, I always believe it with him. And so like, that's kind of what I see. Do you see a tie that binds for some of those guys, like the most successful guys you've worked with, especially on screen, like that 3? Is there something that is a common thread for all them?
Yeah, well, look, I hope it's a combination between writer and performer, and because look, there's people that are amazing that I probably could not write their shit, and I would let them down. Jason's a great example, right? I think he was, the Collins brothers, he was their backup at Harvard Westlake. He's really tall guy. I'm sure you can tell, good basketball player. And he has this sweet spot that I have a specific voice, I guess, which is I enjoy mixing broad, silly comedy with moments of emotional depth. And so my shit doesn't work unless there's an actor. The fact that you said that is so flattering to him, and I'll make sure he hears it, that can be funny. And then the next second, if he's bummed out, hurting, emotionally torn up, sad, dying inside, traumatized, you actually buy it and it doesn't seem like shtick. Zach can do it. Sarah Chalk was able to do it. My wife does it really well, and there's a, I don't want to say keep the metaphor going too much of like between coach and player, but it has that vibe that when you see, no different than, by the way, of course, Larry David wrote for Seinfeld well, man. See those guys in a room, you're like, yeah, no, I get it, And when I mesh with somebody like that, my one weak point is I'm so comfortable. I work with the same people over and over and over and over and over and over. Everybody from one show's on the next show, next show's on the next show. I'm just, partially because I like hanging out with them and partially because it's like a cheat code.
Yeah, it got that point about that quick swing from emotional to funny. I said I was doing a podcast where we were drafting Ted Lasso episodes, and my first overall pick was No Weddings and a Funeral.
Yeah,
because as I said, that show, I think, as well as any I've watched recently, can have me laughing my ass off through fresh tears while I'm still grasping my chest. And, that episode, you've got the cutaway between Rebecca in the church and Ted, pouring his heart out in therapy. And I remember I caught myself, it's the second or third time I've watched through, and I'm grabbing my chest, texting my friends like, all right, well, my number one pick is caked in recency bias and locked up. So it really is a gift. And for both shows to kind of do it in different ways is incredible and really admirable.
Look, it's very cool. I'm not good at accepting compliments, and my wife said I have to look people in the eyes and say thank you. It's very cool. I obviously pass on all the love to Jason and Joe and Brendan and staff and all these knuckleheads. But man, it's I don't know if it's very interesting because I've been challenging myself to try not to do the same thing all the time. But my shtick that I love is I'm always still very tight with all my buddies that I grew up with and went to college with. He can't play basketball anymore because he tore his rotator cuff and is a heart surgeon. But the heart surgeon I'm talking about is named JD. He was my best friend from college. I stole his childhood for Scrubs. We are playing pickleball on Saturday, as we do every Saturday, because it's the one sport he can still play without tearing his arm up. Well, the point of this was my favorite thing is, man, if I can make guys like us get all choked up, it's my favorite thing in the world. For the way I grew up, I will ask my wife and children to leave the room in Field of Dreams when he's going to play catch with his dad. I don't even care if I've watched the movie leading up to it. I'm just like, I need a few minutes. It's not going to be a big deal. That cathartic shit, it gets you, dude. I love it.
Listen, 100%. One of the first things, and I can ask you this now and make sure this checks the box because we are now newly minted friends. You've had to spend 45 minutes with me and listen to me, Chris Farley, show you through Ted Lasso here. Armageddon, the end of that movie. Do you shed tears? Because
it got me a little. By the way. By the way, that should be. People to do their top 10 movies that you never expected in a million years would get the. By the way, because those are the ones that are hysterical when it's not even designed to do it, and the person next to you is like, "What the fuck are you doing?"
Yeah. 15 minutes ago, someone's riding a nuclear warhead on an asteroid, and now I'm screaming, "Harry, I love you," and crying. So, yeah, it makes no sense. Are you crying
in Real Genius with Val Kilmer?
Piers and Val Kilmer should not belong in the same section of the Venn diagram, but here we are.
No, you try. By the way, you know what got me, which absolutely slayed my son. It was because he's the right age for it. Was Avengers Endgame? Tony Stark dying, man. I was in a puddle, and my wife is literally like, "What are you doing?" His daughter. He told his daughter he might not make it.
I'm gonna make him telling him I'm gonna make you cheeseburgers. Your dad liked cheeseburgers. I'm like, he did.
You can have all the cheeseburgers you want.
That's one I can vividly remember. It was the weekend of the draft in Nashville, and I went and saw it with our whole digital show unit, and everyone's eyes were dead forward during that scene because we all knew if we looked, we heard the sniffles. We didn't need the eye contact to know everyone was soaking their shirt with tears.
Not having it, man. It's so funny. My wife's like, these are people in costumes. You know that. Shut up. I didn't even ask you to come.
Yeah. You can wait in the car. I don't need this right now.
The boys and me wanted to come. You don't have to be here. Oh, man. That's a funny list, dude. I'm going to obsess. All I do in the writer's room is try to find different ways to waste time. And tomorrow I'm going to do the 10 most surprising shows or movies that made you cry. There's an episode of News Radio that made me bawl randomly. But yeah, when that stuff happens, it's so embarrassing, but I eat it up, dude.
Tears out of nowhere. You know what? Eventually down the road, we'll have to get you back on here, and we'll just have you do the list of the 10 most surprising
I'll come
crimes.
up if you want. I can even just show up and do that, or send it to you. I will come up with the 10 movies that make guys cry that are embarrassing to say that you cried to these movies. I will definitely shock the world with that.
All right, there we go.
We'll put Muppet movie right up top, by the way.
I figured as much. It was going to be that or like Grease 2 or something.
Look at you, man. You've done your homework. He loves that movie.
Oh my God. It's incredible. Bill, I could sit here and talk to you all day. This has been so much fun. Obviously a huge fan, but thank you so much. I appreciate the time. Congratulations on all the success with all this. It's been a ton of fun to watch, and I promise I will be done compliment bombing you now.
Oh, dude, thank you so much. I'm a fan. It's fun to do. I think I talked to you like after I jokingly on Twitter said, I think I'm a good podcast guest. And just know that whether you saw that or not, and that's why we ended up hooking up, of the 900 tweets I got back, some of which were from podcasts that I'm quite sure had been invented during the tweet, and someone would be like, I'm doing this one in my garage. It's called Bill Lawrence Shows. It's super fun to come and talk to you, man. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate the nice stuff you said, man.
No, absolutely. You're an A+ podcast guest in our book here, and I appreciate you getting back to me there. So thanks so much, Bill. We'll talk to you again soon. With
no
that
problem.
list.
Put it out in the world. Next time you're in town, come play ball. I'll get Russillo out there too, man.
Oh, no, it's perfect. Actually, I'm out in LA full time now, too. So.
Oh, dude, where you living?
I live in Manhattan Beach. I'm over in El Porto.
That's gorgeous, by the way. The guy that runs my company, he has to live here now, but you lived there for ages and ages. I didn't even know enough about your personal life. You got kids?
No, moved out here. So I'm single, 33, no kids. So I've been hanging out 2 blocks from the beach down here, trying to get by.
Dude, that is a life. I mean, did you get sucked into beach volleyball yet? I did for a second when I was your age and living close, but I sucked at it, man.
I haven't gotten there quite yet now. I keep getting people
That's the hub, dude. That's still the hub.
It's unbelievable. I go down every morning and I walk down the Strand and I see people out there grinding early on that too. They don't mess around with that stuff.
I almost blew it. My daughter was really good, but they didn't have boys volleyball in Connecticut where I grew up. They had like Newcomb where you'd catch the ball and then whip it at each other and stuff. But
yeah,
I didn't even know the rules, man.
No, it's different level athletes too. I remember the first time I stepped across the court from like actual men's volleyball players, and I'm
crazy.
thinking, I played D1 football. Like I can go out here and slap my way through this. Got bounced quickly.
No. Dude, it's bad. It's bad. It's immediate bad news. And it's hard and it makes your feet hurt and I'm out.
Yep, exactly. So it's so haven't taken the plunge yet, but between that and surfing, something's got to give at some point here. And I know,
right? You're an LA boy now. Hey, stay in touch. Anything we can do to help, anytime you want me to send someone your way from one of our shows or any of that stuff, let me know, okay?
Definitely. No, I really appreciate it, Bill. Go. Boom. Money in the bank.